Namaste. As many of you in the consciousness community are aware, Aubrey Marcus released 2 controversial videos over the past month. One where he announced that he was expanding his divine union to include his wife Ilana and his girlfriend Alana, and that he was rebranding their relationship as radical monogamy. And in the second video, Aubrey offered clarification on his choice and defended his belief that he received a directive from the goddess Isis to become a throuple and have children with both women. He also proposed a new term for his expansion, radical fidelity. The reason I'm making another reaction video, which will most likely be my last on this topic, is because upon further reflection, I realized that there are a few more avenues worth exploring for those of us who are on a similar path. Those who are seeking a deeper connection to truth, to their higher self, and those who would like to live a more conscious life can benefit when others in the community offer their perspective on controversies like this one. The goal of this video is not to condemn Aubrey, but to share what I'm seeing and sensing with him, and to explore whether he may have strayed from the deeper introspective path that he once modeled. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this. Like many public figures in the spiritual space, Aubrey Marcus is both a genuine seeker and a brand builder, which is a paradox. The more success that one has with their brand, the more monetary compensation flows in. The more fans validate their message, the more potential there is for blind spots to emerge, and for one to drift out of alignment and to stop seeking. Over the years, I believe that Aubrey has allowed his success to distort his self-awareness. As I discussed in my prior videos, I think he confuses personal desires, especially around sexuality and relationships, for divine guidance. When he frames relationship changes like throuples or having children with multiple women as being ordained, it bypasses the healthy questioning of ego, shadow, and personal projection. This gives the impression of a desire being framed as spiritual truth. Why it matters is that authentic spiritual growth comes from humility and self-inquiry, especially when personal pleasure or power is involved. The lack of questioning on Aubrey's part indicates a spiritual bypassing of deeper shadow work. Have you ever followed a teacher whose path over time felt like it was much more about their journey than yours? If so, was it an obvious shift, or did it happen gradually? And once you realized it, did you stop listening, or did you share your feedback with them? I'd love to know. Aubrey has become highly skilled in the language of openness and vulnerability. However, there's a fine line between true vulnerability and strategic vulnerability that might become more of a performance tool, used to maintain control of the narrative, to soften criticism, or to emotionally sway an audience. He may or may not realize this, but when vulnerability is used to shape perception, it blurs the line between openness and persuasion. And to those paying attention, it can come across as manipulation. We as an audience must be on the lookout for these tactics, because they're designed to disarm us and to elicit sympathy when it may not be earned. When you're surrounded by affirming voices and a loyal inner circle, it becomes easier to believe that you're operating from a higher consciousness, even when there are signs of misalignment. Because when you're on a roll, everyone wants to be close to you. For some, it's about proximity to power. For others, it just may be curiosity. But the problem is, when your inner circle becomes over-validating and stops challenging you, as it seems to be the case with Aubrey, then you start to lose perspective. That is the challenge of success. As your fortunes rise, your closest friends and allies default to your instincts and your wishes. Therefore, we must become even more discerning. We must hold ourselves accountable and find trusted allies who can help us see things objectively. That is where I believe that Aubrey failed. We've seen this time and time again with CEOs, heads of state, and perceived gurus. Can anyone convince Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk to change course once they've made up their minds? Mark Zuckerberg spent over $30 billion on his virtual reality project, the Metaverse. It was so important to him that he changed the name of his company from Facebook to Meta. Many of his top employees expressed their skepticism about the project, and some even tried to dissuade him. They asked him questions like, how could we avoid a dystopian reality where the metaverse is used as an opium for the masses? And how will we meaningfully put safety, integrity, and responsibility first? Despite these warnings, Zuckerberg forged ahead, believing that he alone had the vision and the skills to make the metaverse a success. Now, he believed this because he had been validated for years as a genius coder and as the creator of the largest social media platform in the world. But this was pure hubris, and it led not only to the failure of the project and the wasting of billions of dollars, but to mass firings. Because Zuck couldn't be the reason it failed. It had to be other people who messed up. And then there's Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate, who wanted to build a submersible that could take people down to see the Titanic wreck. He started off with good intentions and even employed several top-notch engineers. However, as his carbon fiber prototypes kept failing during the testing phase, his staff encouraged him to switch to titanium, a stronger and safer material. Since Stockton had already spent so much time and money on his current design, he refused to change course. Instead, he fired everyone who spoke out against him, until there was no one left to challenge his assertions. While on an underwater voyage to Titanic, Stockton Rush and 4 other passengers paid for his hubris with their lives. That is what can happen when an ego goes unchecked. For spiritual leaders like Aubrey Marcus, and once again many others, their success makes it increasingly difficult for them to unplug and journey inward, to mine for deeper truths. Other YouTubers like Ian Vogel and Medita Shen, Namaste to both of you, have questioned why Aubrey's friends and advisors didn't warn him that his throuple announcement might not be well received, especially with Dr. Gaffney, a controversial figure in his own right, heaping praise upon them in what looked to many like a bizarre confirmation ceremony. I've seen other creators frame his initial announcement as a marketing mishap. That's because it seems like Aubrey got so good at branding that it was surprising to see how out of touch he was in this case. What I find particularly interesting is that when Aubrey first introduced the concept of radical monogamy, he seemed excited and proud, as if he made a significant breakthrough. Then, when he saw the blowback, he expressed how hurt and confused he was, which begs the question, why do charismatic leaders eventually start to believe their own hype? Is it possible that as they become brands, they unconsciously prioritized inspiration over introspection? Not out of malice, but out of convenience. Aubrey's spiritual narrative often revolves around cosmic downloads, plant medicine journeys, and divine unions, which are subjects that may not be relatable to many of his fans. I mean, they're likely struggling with emotional wounds, disharmonious relationships, and just trying to learn spiritual practices that can help them improve their lives. On that note, I realize that you can experience incredible moments of connection and clarity and have profound revelations while on ayahuasca. But my question is this: have you ever received a directive that you perceived as divine while on plant medicine? And did you follow it? And if so, did things work out the way you hoped and believed that they would? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Now, as Aubrey's life has become more curated and spiritually grandiose, it seems to me that he may be losing touch with true vulnerability and relatability that once made his path inspiring. Aubrey Marcus, the person, seems increasingly fused with Aubrey Marcus, the brand. That fusion can lead to difficulty discerning where true self ends and where public persona begins. When every possible divine message becomes content, reflection becomes monetizable, and self-awareness becomes harder to access without an audience. He may unintentionally filter his growth through what is on brand, which creates a a loop where spiritual evolution is shaped to serve perception rather than truth. And like I said earlier, this is happening across the political spectrum, inside boardrooms, and at spiritual retreats everywhere. I believe that Aubrey's journey began from a sincere place of healing and curiosity, but his success has wrapped his spirituality in layers of influence, projection, and performance. That makes it harder to see personal desires clearly, to receive criticism openly, and to separate genuine vulnerability from brand identity. None of this makes him malicious. It just makes him human. We can all make the same mistake if we're not careful. So keep that in mind when tuning into his content or any other perceived guru's content. Be wary of exalting anyone. We may look up to people, we may respect them and admire them for their talent, wisdom, and accolades. But we must never surrender our identity, our core beliefs, and our ability to be discerning. Just because someone is excellent at communicating, or in the case of a CEO, creating a product and running a company, doesn't mean that they are amazing at everything. Many times their personal relationships suffer because they don't devote the necessary time to nurturing them. So if they suddenly promoted a relationship course, it would make sense to be skeptical, right? If we surrender our discernment and agree to follow another person's teachings without running it through our intuition or asking deeper questions, that leaves us vulnerable, which is how people get into cults. A great example of this is HBO's The Vow, which is about the self-help group NXIVM that was later exposed as a cult. Fascinating watch if you haven't seen it. So the real question in this case isn't whether Aubrey's right or wrong, but whether he's still willing and able to pause the narrative long enough to hear the truth that doesn't flatter him, because that's where the next level of growth lives. That's pretty much all I wanted to say today. As always, thank you so much for listening. Now I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Until next time, Namaste.